What is up, bros and broettes? I'm Inkslasher, and today we are probably continuing one of the most asked for series on this channel. So what this series is we go through every specialist character through Black Ops 3, and I tell you the story behind each individual character. And even though this is one of the most asked for series on this channel, it's definitely not one of the most viewed, and that's kind of why these videos have been kind of put on the back burner. But I've been asked so many times, when is the next video coming, when's the next specialist video coming, that I can't ignore it. You guys want to see it, so here it is. So if you guys want to see more of this series, you want to see more of the specialist character stories, all you have to do is hit that like button. I know a ton of you love this series, so if you do, just show me by hitting that like button, and really, that's all I ask for in return. So the character we're talking about today is Battery, and Battery is an interesting one because she seems so straightforward. She seems like the person that joined the army and is just on the straight and narrow, but really in Black Ops 3, Battery wasn't given a ton of information. We learn a lot about her family and her backstory, but we really don't get to learn a lot about who Battery is as a person. So what we're going to do is we're going to pick apart Battery's story and her information and really try to get to the bottom of who is Battery and what is her story. So the first thing we know about Battery is, first of all, that she is a female and her name is Erin Baker. Now, her bio goes on to explain that she is the youngest in 5 siblings. So she has herself, who is the youngest, and then 4 older brothers. Now, the thing with Battery is she actually has a family tradition of military service going back over 100 years. Now, the interesting thing about this, and I've literally never heard anyone talk about this, is that if we go back in the history of Call of Duty, if we go to the very first Call of Duty game, one of the characters in that game's name was Private Baker. Now, this took place in World War II, and Call of Duty Black Ops 3 takes place in 2065, which means over 100 years ago, Private Baker could be a great-grandfather or even a great-great-grandfather of Battery. But what's even crazier than that is in Call of Duty Ghost, one of the characters in that campaign is Specialist Baker. This character is one of the characters who is out in outer space working on the Icarus project, aka the Odin in Call of Duty Ghosts, another Baker. And it is quite possible that this character could be Battery's father. Now, it's a little bit interesting because these are Infinity Ward games, whereas the game we're talking about today is a Treyarch game, and generally speaking, the stories don't cross over. But maybe that's not the case. Maybe these characters do cross over storylines, and really the Infinity Ward and Treyarch games do take place in the same universe. Or maybe they're not related whatsoever. I just thought I'd throw it out there so you guys had all the information. So as far as the rest of Battery's story goes, when she finishes high school, she then follows her family's passion and joins the military. From there, she volunteered for airborne school where she crushes it and then goes on to become a ranger. After this, eventually she joins the Winslow Accord, which we've talked about in many videos in the past. And now at this point, her job is to destroy high-value targets with salvos. Salvos are basically like artillery, and she also specializes in using advanced high-explosive munitions, as we're going to talk about in a bit here. And when I say a bit, I mean right now, because the next thing we're going to talk about here is Battery's specialist weapon. So it just so happens that her weapon is exactly the same in both Black Ops 3 and Black Ops 4. It's called the War Machine. And basically what this thing is a grenade launcher that fires a frag grenade that breaks into separate live bombs. Now, in Black Ops 3, the War Machine breaks off into 3 live bombs that are each able to kill someone in itself. Now, the specialty of this weapon is you're able to bounce grenades off of walls into buildings, and if you direct impact an enemy, it instantly kills them. So it's a very, very powerful weapon, especially if you're launching this thing into a room full of enemies. Now, as it turns out, in Black Ops 4, the War Machine is a little bit different. First of all, it looks a little bit older, which makes sense based off of the timeline of the 2 games, but on top of that, another big difference is in Black Ops 4, and I could be wrong about this, but based off of my gameplay, when you shoot the War Machine, it doesn't burst into separate live bombs. It is just one individual explosion that blows up and is quite a large explosion. So I believe it's a bigger explosion in Black Ops 4, but you don't get the second explosion of the live bombs that it breaks into in Black Ops 3. But speaking of grenades that break up into pieces, this is where Battery's second ability in Black Ops 4 comes in, called cluster grenades. Now, cluster grenades are essentially the explosives from the War Machine in Black Ops 3, but an individual grenade. So in other words, a grenade that Battery actually has to throw, whereas in Black Ops 3, they were shot out of the War Machine, which really makes sense based off of the timeline, because once they actually put some research and development into developing Battery's War Machine, they were able to put cluster grenades into the War Machine, as opposed to Black Ops 4's just regular grenades in the War Machine. So I thought that was pretty interesting to see how that would develop into Black Ops 3's version of the weapon. So Battery's next ability in Black Ops 3 is called Kinetic Armor, and what this is an electrically reactive armor that deflects bullets. So basically what it actually does in game is deflect 2 to 3 bullets depending on which weapon is shooting at you. The interesting thing about the Kinetic Armor is that it only really works against bullets. It doesn't work with melees, explosives, or headshot damage. Now, the thing is Battery's specialist abilities are based around explosives. She uses explosives. So to me, it would make a lot more sense if this kinetic armor protected against explosives as opposed to bullets. But I guess that wouldn't be as good as the way the kinetic armor works in Black Ops 3. But that is how it actually works. And that is her second ability. So the next thing we're going to look at here is Battery's transmissions. These are the things you unlock as you unlock the various skins for Battery. And they generally give you a story about the character's background, but really this story revolves around Battery's family and specifically her brother. So we'll break it down as the story goes by, but here is the first transmission.
So many memories of my oldest brother James from when all 5 of us were growing up. We were army brats, always on the move from base to base, country to country as Dad got reposted. With the stream of new schools, there was the inevitable fights with other kids, and when it wasn't the Bakers versus the world, well, we were fighting amongst ourselves. James was always the protector and peacekeeper, the voice of reason. He'd keep the bullies at bay and stop things when we got out of control. Mom and Dad had put him in charge enough times that whenever that tone crept into his voice, we all pretty much froze and snapped to attention. I was only 8 when James went into the army. Without his influence around the place, we all basically ran wild. I think my folks were relieved as one by one, we followed him into the service.
So this first transmission is actually the transmission you get the most information about Battery. This one's specifically about her upbringing and her family. You hear her talk about her brother James, and that's actually what the rest of the transmissions are about, starting with this one.
When I heard my mom's voice on the phone, I immediately knew something was wrong. James was KIA. They'd only found out this morning. I was to come home ASAP. Before I could say anything, she'd hung up. I had to get home. I informed my CO and packed my bags, trying my best not to let the shock of it knock me down. Dad met me off the transport, and while he drove us home, he told me what had happened. James's unit was running escort, moving civs out of a hot zone when they were engaged by a hostile rocket crew. He'd circled around, using terrain to flank and engage the enemy with a set of grav spikes. The spikes blew the crew's ammo dump sky high, and James, along with it, ever the protector. He gave his life, ensuring everyone else got to keep theirs.
So the interesting part about this transmission, if you listen to the other specialist characters' transmissions, they often tell old war stories about themselves, a major life event that changed the way they looked at things, or a specific event of how they got a different prosthetic, or how their specialist weapon came to be. But this one isn't about Battery whatsoever, it's about her brother, so it makes you wonder that once specialist missions are in Black Ops 4, will Battery's mission be about her, or will it be about her brother? It's going to be interesting to see. Also, it's interesting to hear the mention of grav spikes in that story, as that is Ruin's specialist weapon, of course. And we do know from Ruin's transmissions that Battery and Ruin have actually been on missions together.
It was a bright, clear morning when we gathered at Arlington for the funeral. 3 generations turned out in their dress uniforms. I was so lost in my own thoughts, I hardly heard the rifle volley ring out. The last time I attended a service here, I was a little girl, and Taps was playing for my uncle. I watched my father's face as the honor guard folded the Winslow Accord colors before presenting the tightly packed triangle to him. Sure. There were tears in his eyes as he accepted the flag. token final exchange of child for cloth. But there was fierce pride, too, as he returned the OIC salute. He had instilled the military traditions of honor, loyalty, and courage in us, and James hadn't wavered from his duty to the last.
Now, I think the most interesting part about that part of the story is that in the funeral ceremony, the flag that they folded up was not an American flag, but rather a Winslow Accord flag. Now, I don't know if this is because America has kind of fallen at this part in the war, or whether this is just a new tradition of soldiers in the Winslow Accord, but I found that part quite interesting.
All of us stuck around for a week or so after James's funeral, grieving, relaxing, telling stories about the good times we had growing up, feigning embarrassment as the inevitable photos from school and family vacations got handed around. Mostly, though, we were just there for each other. There for Mom and Dad. Crying with them when things got too much. Laughing with them when we were all reminded of some ridiculous drama that James had gotten us out of. Soon enough, the time came for us to part company and return to our separate units. I've been back for a day now. I want to get guns up as soon as I can. James died fighting for what he believed in. For what we all believe in. And the best way I can honor him is to get out there and be the protector that he can no longer be. I love you, bro. I'm gonna miss you.
And that is it. That is all of the backstory we get on Battery. Really, we get a ton of information about her family, her brother, but little information on her specifically. We don't know why she chose explosives as her weapons of choice. We don't know what her mentality is on the entire war. We just know her family background, and I'm really interested to see going into Black Ops 4 and learning specifically more about her, and hopefully they don't lean too heavily just on her family background, but more into who Battery is as an actual character. It's interesting. Battery seemed to be one of the more straightforward characters out of any of the specialists, but as it turns out, when we really dig into the story, there really isn't too much there as of right now. So, like I said, really interested to see what they do with this going into Black Ops 4. Let me know what you think of Battery down in the comments below, and as I mentioned earlier, if you enjoy this type of video and want to see more, the way to show me is hitting that like button, and if you want to stay up to date on all my videos, the best way to do so is hit that subscribe button and make sure you have notifications turned on. But guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, guys, peace out.